I'm really excited to be back here a second week, so let me just go ahead and share my screen. Can everybody see that? Yep, perfect. So today I'm really going to be talking about different ways that we can kind of help our kiddos and our families eat healthy. But again, I will preface by saying I am not a dietitian. I am a psychologist who works at the Center for Healthy Weight and Nutrition at Nationwide Children's Hospital. So I have nothing to disclose. So really, we're going to do three different things today. I'm really going to talk about what healthy eating is, and this is going to be more of a sort of dietitian, medical sort of definition. But then I'm going to talk about how we can use psychology to really sort of help kids and families and adults eat healthy, and then talk about a few behavioral methods that can be used to help with this. So when we think about healthy eating, I really just kind of want to highlight what I think dietitians and the medical community kind of thinks of as healthy eating. So this definition is really from the Dietary Guidelines for Americans. And it says a healthy diet really emphasizes fruits, vegetables, whole grains, low fat, fat-free milk products, lots of different types of protein, both animal products and plant products. The diet is low in saturated fats, trans fats, cholesterol, sodium, and added sugars. Okay, so now when our dietitians work with families and tell them that, I feel like this is often the response I get from kids and families. Like a lot of times, kids and families, I think, hear that, and all of these questions come up, and it just really feels like they are being deprived of something and they're not really sure what they can and cannot still eat, right? Um, and a lot of times I think people feel like they have to make these really difficult choices. So they may feel like, oh, okay, I can never ever eat my favorite things anymore. I can never have cookies. I can never have donuts. I can never have burgers. I'm going to have to always pick fruits and vegetables. But of course, that is just not true. So healthy eating does not equal deprivation. So I do feel like a lot of times people just in general are presented with a vast array of choices throughout their day, right? So looking at the literature related to behavioral economics, um, people can make up to 35,000 choices a day. And when I'm talking about that, I'm not just talking about like, do I choose this drink or this drink, but even very minute choices like, do I choose to sit in this chair? Do I choose to continue to pay attention to this thing? Do I choose to go ahead and answer this text, right? There are lots of little bitty choices that we are often not conscious of, but we are making all of the time. And throughout our day, up to 200 of those choices can be related to food or drink, which equals about 2,000 decisions an hour or one decision every 2 seconds that we're making. So I want everyone to take just a minute and sort of do this little thought experiment with me. So I want you to pretend that you have recently gotten to work, and right next to your work, there is this bakery, right? And you decide that you are going to stroll from your office over to the bakery. And as you sort of go that way, you look in the window and you see all of these really lovely looking baked goods. So there are donuts and pastries and really delicious looking things. And you get into the store and you are presented with a multitude of choices. Now, mind you, in the bakery, the counter is full of all of these different baked goods. And you may be able to see on the menu that they also have oatmeal, right? But the oatmeal is not in that baked goods case. So you are kind of thinking about what it is you want to choose. But ultimately, a lot of times we end up picking the baked goods or the donuts because that's what's easiest. That's what's presented in front of us, and it really looks good. And we've had all these past experiences where we've really enjoyed that. And because the oatmeal is not sort of up front and center, we'd have to do a lot of like extra mental work to sort of remember that the oatmeal is there and order that, right? So a lot of times we end up picking the baked goods. So a lot of the decisions that we make throughout our day, we typically make on autopilot, right? So within this sort of realm of behavioral economics, and I'll talk just really briefly about about what behavioral economics is. So behavioral economics is a field that sort of combines both psychology and the field of economics related to sort of human behavior and choices. So it is the combination of those things to really look at how humans choose to make choices within a system. Um, so we often talk about our brains having like an autopilot brain and a pilot brain. And our brain has sort of developed this autopilot to really sort of short circuit some of those choices because we just have so many choices in our day. So if we can make things easier for ourselves, we do that, right? It helps us deal with some of those complex issues that we have. But it can also compromise some of those decisions that maybe we had wanted to make differently, right? And dominant options are really, really huge factors into determining what choice we typically make, which is why that example with the donut counter, um, we often pick the donuts because they're right there. Okay. So if we think about how we can sort of make some of our decisions easier, we can, oh, I'm sorry, I did not mean to go there. We can use this field of behavioral economics. They have this term called nudging. And nudging is really just where we make sort of very tiny little changes to our environment in order to sort of steer our decisions in a different direction, right? This is also called choice architecture. So, in order for something to be a successful nudge, it's got to have two different parts. So, number one, it has to be less effortful for us. And number two, it has to increase our motivation to pick that thing. So now I want to share about 9 different tips that can really help our families and our kiddos to make some of those healthy choices and to just make them easier for people to make. Because again, I really feel like when people think they need to eat healthy or they've been told they need to eat differently, eat healthy, in their mind, they're going through all of these complex processes and decisions about like, oh, I can't eat this, I can't eat this. It's going to be so hard, right? That you get all of that. But with these sorts of tips to be able to sort of nudge people, we can make it a little bit easier. So tip number one is just put the healthier foods at the front of the fridge or anywhere where they're more easily accessible and you can see them. So if you think about this, if you like prep things the night before and then you put it at the front of the fridge, you're more likely to pick that thing. So think about like if you have made overnight oats, you make that for yourself the night before, you put it in the front of the fridge, it's going to be really easy to kind of grab and go. You're going to be more likely to get it. And you put things that are less nutritious out of eyesight. So either in the back of the fridge or maybe in one of those drawers, at the bottom of the fridge, or you put them like in high up cabinets where it's going to take you a lot more effort to first remember that they're up there and two, to actually get to them, right? Tip number two, um, whenever you're eating, use smaller plates. A lot of plates, I think, in American households are really big plates. But we talk with kiddos and families about getting smaller versions of plates, even like salad plates, because then you can fan your food out and it will look like you're eating more food just because it's on a smaller plate. Other thing that you can really do is if you want, like if you're eating pasta, like mix it with stuff, mix it with salad, mix it with rice, mix it, I'm not rice, I'm sorry, like mix it with salad or other vegetables, right? And that sort of bulks it up. And then you're still eating pasta. No one's saying you can't eat pasta, but you're not eating a large sort of solo portion of pasta. Tip number three, use mirrors. So this is a really interesting study that recently came out where they used mirrored tableware to sort of make people feel like they were eating more. So if you look at this picture at the bottom, this is actually like a half cup, but the back of the cup is a mirror. And if you look at this plate, it's like a half plate, but there's this portion that's a mirror. So it actually makes you think that you're eating and drinking more than you are just because it looks that way. So I was like online trying to see if I could purchase these things and I couldn't find them, but you can find things like these plates up here that are really shiny that would really reflect your food, right? So maybe it's not a mirror, but it's like a shiny metal plate. So it'll still look like you're eating more. Um, and then another tip that we can use with families is just putting a mirror behind your table. So when you're eating, you're sort of also seeing your reflection, and that helps you be more mindful about how much you're eating. Tip number 4, turn off distractions while you're eating. So I meet a lot of kiddos in families that eat in front of screens. They eat with their phone at the table, or they have a TV on, or if they have a computer right there and they're eating at their desk. But if you eat in front of a screen, you are more likely to eat more calories just because it's very distracted eating. You're doing a lot of that mindless eating. You're not thinking about how much you're eating. So it's kind of just this motion, right? So I work with families a lot of times to help them really turn off distractions and be more present while they're eating. Um, and you can use things like conversation starters. If you look online, there's lots of different like family dinner conversation starters. And I talk with families too about like very mindfully taking breaks. So like taking a few bites and then very intentionally putting your spoon or your fork down and using that opportunity to like drink, and drinking through a straw will also help you like slow down that eating and be more mindful. Tip number 5, this is supposed to be a video. I hope it, oh, good, okay. Um, Tip number 5 is just to make more food more convenient. So if we cut up our fruits or our vegetables and make them more sort of bite-sized grab and go, we're more likely to go ahead and eat those things. So think like cut up apples already in your fridge, right? You're more likely to be able to just take that and go. Prep parts of your meals. So if like chopping up vegetables is one of the things that keeps you from making dinner every night, do that ahead of time, short circuit that for yourself, freeze it, and then you can just get out those chopped up vegetables and use that already. And then to cut food into smaller pieces so that it's more bite sized, more easy to just kind of take with you. I'm going to see if this video plays. Can people hear it? No. Okay. I think that's okay because it's mostly text. So, oh, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Get back to where it was. Okay. I just thought that was a really cool video to sort of show everybody that technique like in action. Tip number 6 is to really just make healthy eating fun. So if you think about how you present food, the way you present it to kids and adults really plays a big part in them sort of choosing to eat it. So like rainbow kebabs or an Elmo veggie tray, or doing something like putting nuts in a gumball machine. So kids really enjoy like going and getting them out and then they eat the nuts. Um, but then also really encouraging kids to sort of play with their food. So the more exposure kids have to the food, the more we sort of normalize that food. So we may not even be actually physically eating that food, but just if kids are around different types of food, different fruits, veggies, healthy stuff, they're going to be more likely to accept it. Tip number 7 is to really make healthy eating a choice, right? So instead of asking, do you want this when you offer different things to people, ask which of these do you want? Because that then gives them that freedom of choice to say, oh, I want this one, right? Tip number 8 is to use tall glasses. There have been studies done that show that people sort of perceive tall, skinny glasses as having more liquid than short, sort of squat glasses, even though the amount of liquid may be exactly the same. So if families are going to be serving their children or themselves sort of drinks that have more sugar in them, ask them to use a tall, skinny glass because then in general, people will just drink less. And tip number 9, give food a really exciting, fancy name, right? So for kids, instead of just calling things carrots, you can give it a fancy name like X-ray vision carrots. And I was really excited that I found this graphic. I thought it was really good. But this also works for adults too. So think about like when you go to a sort of upscale restaurant, nobody just has veggie side dish on the menu. All of the names are really sort of fancy, sort of like expensive sounding names. So something like spring vegetable medley, right? Um, so that totally works. If you give it a fancy name, people are more likely to be interested in it. And then this is just my real quick comic that sort of illustrates this point. And that's it. Does anyone have any questions? I tried to really stay within the time limit.